Hello students, I'm Sam sir. And as you know that we were doing this chapter number 10 in your book known as Fundamentals of Human Geography. The chapter's name is Human Settlements. You have seen the part 1 of this chapter's video. If you haven't, I recommend that you see it once. Now, we are talking first about the problems, first in the rural settlements and then in the urban settlements. Uh, when you consider the different stages of development of different countries, you have the underdeveloped countries, then you have the developing countries, and you have the developed countries. Now, when you consider the underdeveloped and the developing countries, the number of rural settlements they have is much more in number than the urban settlements they have. And these settlements, even though they are large in number, they are poorly equipped and they have poor infrastructure. Often we find that the water supply is not adequate, or if the water supply is there, the quality isn't good enough. And contaminated water causes diseases such as cholera and jaundice, and every enteric diseases related to stomach and the intestines, are caused by contaminated water. The water may be contaminated by sewage, or it can also be contaminated by industrial waste or agricultural waste. And there, floods are also very common, and droughts are also very common. And if irrigation is done, crop cultivation sequences, if the irrigation is not done, then the cultivation sequence is badly affected. Some more problems of rural settlements are the lack of sanitation and hygiene, includes general absence of toilet and garbage disposal facilities, and this causes health related problems. Often, the garbage or the runoff from the garbage enters into drinking water, and the general level of awareness of people about sanitation and hygiene is also not as properly developed as in developed countries. The houses are constructed out of materials which are commonly available in that vicinity. Let us say if you're talking about Thar Desert, they build houses from mud because the mud houses are much uh, cooler in summertime compared to the concrete houses. But such houses which are not made from durable material, they are susceptible to damage due to elements of weather. If the house is built of mud and if you have a heavy shower, then part of the wall is bound to get damaged, and then this requires a lot of maintenance. And shelter for animals are also constructed very close to the human residence. They want their animals to live near them for the security of their animals. But what it results is in even more unhygienic conditions because of the proximity of the animal, because of the dung and the excretion of the animal uh, creates unhygienic conditions, and that invites vectors such as flies and mosquitoes, and that creates problem for the people living there. This is to show the poor sanitation conditions in rural areas. This is a mud house, looks very good, but needs a lot of maintenance. Summer problems are the improper roads. If the road is not built with or covered with uh, bitumen or tar or concrete, that such a road is known as an unmetalled road. And this creates a lot of problem for the people using those roads in the rainy season. The settlements virtually get cut off from the urban areas because these roads, uh, they have potholes and filled with water, and it becomes difficult for people to use those roads, and that affects their daily life and activities and especially in case of emergencies, it creates a lot of problem. And this problem is more serious where the houses are just scattered over the landscape and the villages have not yet formed. The methods and means of communication solves this problem to some extent, but uh, people who live in such conditions, they usually wait for the rains to go away. This is an example of unmetalled road. Now, when we talk about urban settlements, London was the first city in the world to reach a population of 1 million, and this happened in the year 1810. By the year 1982, there were 175 cities which crossed the 1 million mark. And today, there are 54% of the world's population, they live in cities with population more than 1 million. And by the year 1800, there was only 3% of the world's population which lived in urban settlements. Now compare this with today, like in 220 years, the population which lives in cities, there's a vast difference between 3% and 54%. That's urbanization for you. It means the increase in population, the proportional population of a country who live in urban areas. To find out the value, what you do is you take the population of urban areas and this you divide with the total population of the country. And this figure you multiply with 100, and then uh, you come to the percentage of urbanization. Presently, the urbanization of India is 31.16%. Now, the rural to urban area migration is the most important cause of urbanization. Some 20 to 30 million people leave the countryside, leave the rural areas, and move into our cities and towns. Uh, Not just the Indian cities and towns, but all over the world. So, uh, if you look at the 19th century, the urbanization occurred rapidly because of the Industrial Revolution and the Green Revolution. And chiefly because of the Green Revolution in the 20th century, the urbanization occurred rapidly in developing countries. The earlier, what has happened in the developed countries, the urbanization which happened in the developed countries happened in the 19th century, and in the 20th century, the urbanization rapidly occurred in the developed countries, especially in the second half of the century. This is the street scene from Mumbai. You have people just arrived from the train. As you can see, they are from village, and they end up settling down like this because they also need housing and every other facility. But in absence of those, they put up shanties like this on unused railway line. Now, the definition of urban areas, it varies from one country to another. The following eight are the common basis of classification. That is the population size, occupational structure, administration functions, the location of the place, the function of the urban centers, administrative towns, trading and commercial towns, and cultural towns. Most countries define cities on the basis of population. Uh, they usually set a lower limit for the number of people settled. For example, in Colombia, if it is 1,500 people, they call it an urban area. In Argentina, if it is 2,000 people, in India, you know it very well, it's 5,000 people. But Japan, because it's having a dense population, because of the country being on islands, the number is much higher, of 40,000 people. In India, if the population density is more than 400 people per square kilometer, and if the population is more than 5,000 people, and there's an administrative body to look after the administration work of the town, and if 75% of the people of the male population or more than that, if they are engaged in non-primary activities, then we call that place as an urban place. Countries with low population take a lower number as cutoff. For example, in Finland, if there are 250 people, that they consider that as an urban area. And in our country, even a single housing colony will definitely have more than 250 people. It's not the population size only, but also the major economic activities which are undertaken, which define an urban settlement. This is point number two, that is the occupational structure. In India, if the settlement uh, has got more than 75% of the male population engaged in non primary economic activities, that is taken as an urban settlement. And this figure in a smaller country like Italy is smaller, of course, it is 50%. Now, the administration, when we say that, the administrative setup of a place determines whether it's an urban settlement. In India, a settlement of whether it's of any size or population, location, or function. In India, irrespective of the size of the population, location, or function, it is classified if it has a municipality or cantonment board or a notified area council. If these things are there, it's called as an urban settlement. When we talk about Latin American countries, they consider a place as urban if it has got an administrative center, just like in India. Then, about location. The location of the earlier settlements were based on availability of water, building materials, and fertile lands. While these are still important today, modern technology plays a significant role in locating settlements far away from the sources of these materials, and still the settlements can uh, develop. The setting requirements of for towns with different functions are different. Apart from the site itself, the location of the town plays an important role in the expansion of towns. The urban centers, which are located near important trade routes, experience rapid development. If you consider Mumbai, for example, it's a port city and it's also strategically located. It has got Gujarat, which is nearby. There's a lot of trading occurring from Gujarat, and because of that, there's a lot of exchange of import and export. It's a hub for import and export. Now, all these economic activities, and also it's the capital, state capital of Maharashtra state. Now, all this makes Mumbai as a developed place. Also, the history is playing a important background in that. Now, let's talk about the function of urban centers. Here, we refer to the dominant functions. We're talking about the dominant functions of towns and cities. Large cities have a wide variety of functions, but there are a couple of functions that dominate. These cities are therefore known for such functions. Example, Jamshedpur and Bhilai are known for steel production. Chandigarh is known for as an administrative city. Shimla and Manali are known for the tourism. Now we talk about the administrative towns. The national capitals and state capitals, which house administrative offices of central government and state government, are called administrative towns. Example is New Delhi. We have other examples from other countries. Within the country itself, we have the example of the state capitals of Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu. We have other state capitals from other countries, such as British Columbia and New York, and such towns are administrative towns. Now, certain towns and cities are known for trade and commerce. They may be in certain goods and services, or they may be overall known for trade and commerce. It is not just the goods and services, but also the transport nodes that are important to economic activity. because the transport nodes, they make the services and goods accessible to places where such services and goods are not there. So it evens out and it adds value to economy. Now these towns become the nodes, and such nodes are towns and cities which are important for trade and commerce. Examples are Winnipeg and Surat. We have Surat known for trade in diamonds. We have Lahore, Agra, Baghdad, etc., Kansas City. Certain towns are known for the cultural value. Such cities such as Jerusalem, Mecca, and Varanasi, Mathura, they are known for pilgrimage, for people following different faiths. They are considered cultural towns and they are of great religious importance. Towns and cities also perform health and recreational activities. Example is Miami, you have Mahabaleshwar. In industrial towns, you have Pithampur, you have Devas, you have Pittsburgh. In mining, you have Singrauli, you have Dhanbad, you have Johannesburg. In transport, you have Mughal Sarai, you have Visakhapatnam. Now, when you classify towns on the basis of uh, forms, now the form of settlement, architecture, and settled style of building and other structures are an outcome of its historical and cultural traditions. An urban settlement may be linear, square, star, or crescent shape. About this, you have learnt in chapter number 4 in your book known as India, People and Economy. The chapter number 4 had the same heading known as Human Settlements as the heading for this chapter, and you are advised to see the video of that chapter also and the notes also. The cities that have developed over time from historic beginnings have irregular shape because they just came up and they just grew. While the newer ones are carefully planned, they have been built according to certain plan. Chandigarh is a good example of a well planned city in India. Now let's talk about two cities. One is Addis Ababa, which is the capital city of Ethiopia. It was established in the year 1878. And the other one is Canberra, which is the capital city of Australia, and it was established in the year 1912. Addis Ababa means the new flower. The whole city of Addis Ababa is located on a hill valley, hill and valley topography. The road pattern, if you look closely, they represent the local topography. The roads are curving where the hills are there, and the roads are straight where the hills are absent. The roads radiate from the government headquarters. So wherever you find what you call as Chauraha in India or the junctions, these are the place where the government headquarters are located. Then you also have the market areas. You have places which are the main marketing zones. Then you have it's a facilitated place. Like uh, there are universities, there are medical colleges, good number of schools, which make Addis Ababa an educational center. It also has a terminal station uh, and the airport that is known as Bole Airports is a relatively new airport. The city has witnessed rapid growth because of multifunctional nature and being a large nodal center is located in the center of Ethiopia. Now, when you talk about Canberra, this was developed as a planned city, a capital of Australia. There was an American landscape architect known as Walter Burley Griffin. He in his time had envisaged a garden city for some 25,000 people. He took into account the natural features of the landscape, and you can see the circles. You have some circles here. Now, these were supposed to be the five main centers. Of course, in this map, if you were to count the circles, there are more than five. But we're talking about 1912 when this man uh, had planned this city. Now, these five main centers each has a separate city function. During the last few decades, the city has expanded to accommodate several satellite towns which have their own centers. You see the smaller centers on the outskirts, and some which are not there in this map. And the city has a wide open space. They have wide open spaces. There are parks and gardens. There's also a lake here. So there's a contrast between these two cities. Although both are fairly new. Now talk about the types of urban settlements. You have the town, the city, the conurbation, the million city, and megalopolis. Now you can understand the concept of a town when you refer it to a village. You compare it with a village, and then you uh, get the concept of a town. Specific non-agricultural functions such as manufacturing, retail, wholesale trade, professional services exist in towns. But one or all of these are absent in a village. The land area and population size, therefore, are not the only criteria which sets apart a town from village. Now, cities are much larger than towns and have greater number of economic functions. An urban settlement is termed as a city when the population crosses 1 million mark. So, this is a defining term. What is a city? A city is having a population of more than 10 lakh people. Town is a place where population is more than 5,000 people. And village is a place where the population is less than 5,000 people. In addition, in a city there are various degrees of complexity and association in social life within a human settlement. A city is the physical form of the highest and most complex type of associative life. Now, this is a fairly new term, known as conurbation. This was coined by Patrick Geddes in the year 1915, and any large area of urban development that has resulted from merging of towns and cities, which were originally separate, is known as conurbation. You should know this definition, it's very simple. There were towns and cities which were located nearby, and as each town and each city expanded in size, they merged with their neighboring towns and cities. That is conurbation. Delhi is an example of conurbation. It comprises of Gurugram, Noida, Faridabad, and Ghaziabad. This conurbation is known as National Capital Region of Delhi. And then you have the million city. These are cities with at least 1 million residents. As you know, London was the first city in the world to become a million city, and soon afterwards, in 1850, Paris followed, and 10 years later, New York also became a million city. By the year 1950, there were 80 such cities all around the world which became million cities. Today, there are 512 such cities which are million cities. And it is expected by the year 2030, that is 10 years from now, there will be some 662 cities which will cross the 1 million mark. Now, this is an old term actually, megalopolis. This is a Greek word meaning a great city, and this term was popularized by John Gottman. It is a union of conurbations and signifies a super metropolitan region. You already know what is a conurbation, and if several of them combine, it forms something that is a megalopolis. Example, we don't have any in India, but in the United States of America, the region of Boston in the north, and from there to south of Washington is an example of megalopolis. Now we talk about the distribution of megacities. A conurbation of closely located cities with a total population of more than 10 million is termed as a megacity or a megalopolis. So a megalopolis should have population of more than 10 million. New York was the first to become mega city in 1950. That time the population had become 12.5 million. There are 31 megalopolis in the world today, and they are developing constantly. And it's happening in the developing countries also. And the rate of developing countries is the same as a rate in developed countries when it comes to megacities. We talk about the problems in human settlements in developing countries. Now, in developing countries, the settlements suffer from many problems such as the unsustainable concentration of the population. The land is not able to sustain the population. Also, civic problems such as congested housing and streets, shortage of drinking water, the electric supply is not stable. You have erratic electric supplies, you have load shedding and all that because the power available is the same, whereas the consumers are increased. The same problem occurs with water supply also. Then the waste generated, sewage and garbage, it's out of proportion to the capacity that the municipal corporation can handle. The healthcare facilities and the educational facilities are not sufficient to sustain such a large population. Often the roads are dug up for some reason or the other. You have congested roads, the transportation is slow, the roads are crowded, the air, water, and noise pollutions are very much a problem there. If you live in such a place, and especially if you live near a railway line, you know what noise pollution is. Now we talk about some more problems of the settlements. Most of the cities in developing countries are not properly planned. They just happen to be. They just came into existence and they just happen to develop like that. People are attracted to cities for employment opportunities. They want the civic amenities, and that makes the cities unsustainably and seriously crowded. The shortage of housing, which leads to vertical expansion. You have the uh, buildings rising upwards, skywards, and those who cannot afford it, for them, the slums provide some answer. And that again is an example of substandard housing. But people have to live there. People, in any case, they will have to live somewhere. Then that develops squatters settlements, and also illegal settlements come up. Now the economic problem, because of the decreasing employment opportunities in rural as well as smaller urban areas, people move to larger urban areas. This is the case of developing countries. This constantly pushes up the population of urban settlements, and that generates a pool of unskilled and semi-skilled migrant population in already saturated urban areas. These are the people who have not yet managed to get an employment, but still they will use the social and civic facilities in the place. Now, we talk about socio-cultural problems. The financial resources in a large city are usually not sufficient to meet the basic needs of a huge population. Healthcare and education facilities are available, but not in the reach of the urban poor. Those who can pay for it get it. Those who cannot, they suffer. Crimes increase because of lack of employment and lack of education. There are other problems such as um, um, uh, getting addicted to drug and alcohol. There are problems of children not able to continue their education. Then, in male selective migration, It distorts the sex ratio in the cities. There are more males in the cities than there are in the rural areas. Creates a lot of urban environmental problems. The large urban population generates a lot of waste. Some of this may be toxic and dangerous to the environment, but since it cannot be handled, all of it cannot be handled, it goes into the environment and pollutes the potable water, which is already in less supply. Improper sewerage system creates unhealthy conditions. Domestic and industrial sewerages are dumped without treatment. In addition to the domestic liquid waste, we have the industrial liquid waste also, because towns are urban areas, cities are urban areas. They are mostly into secondary and tertiary economic activities, and they also generate waste. Concrete structures heat up the air, and they also do not allow the rainwater to infiltrate into ground. So that does not allow the groundwater to be recharged sufficiently. That again leads to the problem of water shortage. So it's a vicious circle. Domestic and industrial fuel, or the smoke, or the gases released from such activities, they pollute the air, including the smoke released from vehicles. When we talk about the linkages between rural areas and urban areas, cities and towns and rural settlements are linked through the movement of goods, resources, and people. The linkage is crucial for the sustainability of human settlements in both the places, in urban as well as rural settlements. Rural to urban migration has put an enormous pressure on urban infrastructure and services that are already in meager supply, that are already marginalized. The rural areas must be developed. These are some possible solutions. If you are asked in exams about your opinions, you can write this and add from your understanding as well. The rural areas must be developed so that there is a balance in the economic, social, and environmental requirements of the rural areas. That will decrease the pressure on the urban areas and also develop the rural areas. Eradicating rural poverty and improving their quality living, creating employment in rural areas, and providing educational and healthcare facilities in the rural area itself. That will go a long way towards improving the living conditions in rural areas as well as in urban areas. Now, as per the World Health Organization, they have a term known as a healthy city. What is it? A healthy city is one which has got these four things. It should have a clean and safe environment. It should meet the basic needs of all its inhabitants, whether rich or poor, any segment of the society. The healthy city should involve the community, the people in local government. It should also provide easy access to health services. The United Nations development programs, uh, they have something known as an urban strategy. This is a plan to increase the living condition in urban areas. Here are the 5 points. First is to increase the shelter for the urban poor. Poor people will always be there with us, and they will be in villages as well as in the cities, and they also need housing. So, the strategy number one is to increase the shelter for urban poor. If they are given, just like we talked about the problem, if in the previous slides, if the rural areas themselves are developed, similarly, if we can do for the urban areas also, if we understand the problem of the poor and do something for them about shelter and about the basic amenities there, it will go a long way in making the urban life also better. Second is providing basic urban services such as education, primary healthcare, clean water, and sanitation. Third is improved access to women to the basic services and government facilities. Fourth is upgrading energy use and alternative transport system. You have the metro, you have the city buses, In certain parts of the world, you also have uh, a path only for bicycles. And of course, because we all breathe the same air, whether we are rich or poor, educated or uneducated, an infant or a great grandfather, we breathe the same air. So we have to put efforts to reduce the air pollution also. This is another chapter. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and wait for the next video. Bye for now.